This is a bus in Christchurch. Fairly standard. It's the only source of public transport. There's no trains. If you're going to get somewhere, it's going to be on a bus. So first we'll do just some general overview of how it works. It's overseen by ECAN, which is actually the Christchurch, council. They subcontract out to other firms to do the day-to-day running, but they're the ones responsible for what you're going to see here today. Blame the council. So I don't have really recent data, but from 2010, there were over 17 million trips on the buses. So it's probably going to be a bit less now, considering there's been quakes and a whole bunch of people left. But that's still a pretty, sizable amount of traffic. It's not just some little country town. Well, Christchurch is, but if you want to get a card to use the buses, you don't have to get a card. You can use cash. But if you want to get a card, you get, discounts and stuff, and you don't have to carry cash. It costs you $10 one-off fee to get the card. You can't get that back. But also, you've got to load up $10 credit, so $20 all up if you want to get a card. Up to 2011, we had over 320,000 cards issued. Now, not all of those cards will be in operation all at one time. Like, some of them will have been lost and broken, and sometimes tourists and stuff will get them for short times and then they'll leave. But we're dealing with, quite a decent number of cards out there. It would be shocking if something were to happen and they, all needed replacing. Okay, so this is what a MetroCard looks like. It's a fairly standard plastic credit card size, card. It's a contactless card, so you just swipe it. It's a RFID technology. It's supposed to be smart, but yeah, that word doesn't apply. You have to tap onto buses when you want to ride them. You don't have to tap off, which is the case with most other systems around the country and the world. It's kind of good if you're into anonymity, like it can't track where you get off a bus. Not so good if you want to collect accurate statistics about how much people use it, but hey, that's not my problem. Each card has a stored amount of credit. You can top up the cards and your fare is deducted when you use it. You normally top up by cash, you give it to the driver. We'll see that you can also top up online, and that's a problem. Each card, there's an official minimum maximum range. You're not allowed to have more than $200 on a given card, and you can go to negative $2. These are theoretical limits, not actual limits. So if you want to find out how much credit you've got left on your card, you can either go to the website and type in your number, we'll get to that in just a minute, or there's a little screen on the buses that flashes up your left credit when you use them. If you want to buy a card, you've got to provide quite a bit of information, name, phone number, address, date of birth. Historically, you also needed to provide photo ID to be seen by the staff, but quite thankfully they stopped requiring photo ID a couple of years ago, so you still need to provide information, but this is not really verified, so, You can register a card online once you've bought it. That gives you a few extra options, like topping it up via a credit card instead of with cash, and you can block cards if you lose them. Now we'll see in a minute why this is a major problem. This is what the back of a MetroCard looks like. You see in the top left-hand corner there's a 6-digit number. This is called the etched ID. It's basically the ID of that card. It's what you use if you want to register it online, if you want to call up and report your card as stolen. This is the number you need. Now before we get into the real technical stuff of the cards, I'm going to show you what you can do when you register them online. You'll be presented with this form. It's reasonably standard. At first glance you think, okay, so it's just another web sign-up form. You need to enter your card number, that's a 6-digit number on the back of your card. You need to enter an email address and a password. first glance that seems fine, but if you think about this a little more carefully, you'll notice that that card number, it's a 6-digit number. It's not like a super secret. Anybody can start writing down 6-digit numbers. There's no verification at all on this page to prove that you're actually the one with that card. So that's like a major problem. The other thing is, there's no captcha on this page. Yeah! So, who knows how to write Python? We can script registering these cards. Now, if somebody has already registered the card, you can't register it again, but I don't have any actual data to prove this, but I don't think many people register their cards when they buy them. So I'm guessing you could probably register something like 90% of the cards out there. So, let's say you've gone and registered a card. This is the screen you're presented with. As you can see, there's a couple of things. You see the balance on the card, that's kind of expected. But you see there the user's name? Like, we just saw, we don't need to verify who we are, and now we have their name. So, that's kind of bad, but wait till you see what else you can get. Yeah! So, if you want to update your details, all your current details are visible, and we just noticed that there's no verification. So, you can script pulling like most people's addresses out of Christchurch, and their phone numbers and their date of births, and as we know in New Zealand, that's basically your identity. You can pretty much spoof someone with that. Okay, so now onto the actual cards themselves. They use Mayfair Classic technology. Now Mayfair Classic is an old NFC standard. This is an example of a card. They come in lots of different form factors. It's basically a coil of wire, which is the antenna, and a tiny microchip. They're reasonably simple. For those of you who already know about them, the next couple of slides are just going to be, recap, but some people won't, and I want you to understand what Mayfair Classic is. So each card, you can get them in different sizes, but these ones are 1 kilobyte. There's a bunch of bytes that are used for things like keys and IDs and stuff, so not all of that's usable, but you get a few hundred bytes of general purpose read-write memory. Cards are divided up into sectors, 16 sectors per card. Each sector is broken up into 4 blocks. So out of these 16 sectors, each one has 2 authentication keys. They're used both to authenticate the reader to the card and the card to the reader. So in theory, if you have a card and you don't know the keys, you can't read the content. And if you have a reader and you don't know the keys, the card won't authenticate to that reader. As we'll see, these don't really work. As well as the keys, there are access bits which you can set to give different permissions to each of those keys. So you can allow them to only read or only write or both. Or you can lock them out entirely. Each card has a 4-byte UID. This is hard-coded, burned in at manufacture time. You can't change this number. It's supposed to globally, uniquely identify the card. They ran out of numbers a couple of years ago. Yeah. So now the new ones have 7-byte UIDs, because that'll work. Anyway. So they were released nearly 20 years ago, which is quite a while for technology. And a few years ago, there was a bunch of researchers in Europe who reverse engineered the cards completely and discovered that they weren't very secure. So they use a proprietary crypto algorithm. Nothing wrong with doing that. No. It's called P0wning. There's online implementations and software so you can emulate cards and stuff. What the researchers discovered was a number of different attacks. In summary, what you can do with them is, if you have access to a card, you can retrieve those authentication keys. And if you have access to a reader, you can retrieve the keys from the reader as well. So they're meant to stop people from accessing the card, but they don't really work. So, now we know what's like the underlying internals of a Metro card. Yes, it's Mayfair Classic technology. It's pretty old. It's been cracked for a few years now. Right, so, oops. Okay, so if you just want to brute force the keys on a card, you can do that, but it takes quite a while. So you don't want to do that if you can help it. And so the next point is, once you know one key, you can very quickly find out the rest of the keys. So that's really helpful if the keys are like the same between the cards, because as soon as you crack one, then you can read all the others. If every card has different keys, then it's not very useful, because you have to crack each one individually. And the Metro card uses different keys for each card, which is, thumbs up. At least, they're trying. And the keys are derived from that UID. So the UID is public. You don't need to authenticate to the card before you can read it. And somehow there's a hash function applied to that. Now, it might be a proprietary hash function, or it might be a standard hash function with a salt applied, but either way, it's not trivially crackable. I haven't been able to crack it. Maybe you will. So, that means I can't read the content of a card because, I could, but it would take me days, possibly, to crack the keys. And then I have to do it again on the next card. So, that's no good, right? But wait! Yeah, default key, FFFF, is on every card of the A key of sector 0. That's a problem because we can use the, nested attack and that default one to crack all of the other keys on the other sectors very quickly. So that basically gives us read-write access to every Metro card in a matter of seconds. So now we've discovered how we can access the content of the Metro card. Let's have a look at what's actually stored on them. There's a lot of data, like nearly a kilobyte, but these are the interesting bits. So block 0 is the very first bit of the card. That's the unique UID, non-changeable. That's how the keys are generated. We'll use that later, but it's not particularly relevant. In the first couple of blocks, remember I told you that on the back of the card there's a 6-digit number? That's repeated in code, like in data stored on the card. That's going to be quite useful. And further down the card, blocks 12 and 13, we have some really interesting information. On the left, we have the transaction ID, so that's basically how many times in the total life of that card has it been used on a bus. It generally just counts up. And on the right-hand side, we have the balance, stored as the number of cents. So obviously it's all hex rather than decimal, but it's trivial to just, scan for the value you're looking for or modify the value you're looking for. As you can see, this data is raw. There's no encryption applied to it. So they assumed that there was no way to get the authentication keys from the cards, and therefore there was no need to encrypt the data. So that's another major security issue. Yes. So the readers on the buses operate in a standalone mode. So that means basically they don't have a real-time link back to the central servers. And therefore, they're kind of forced into trusting whatever the card tells them, because you could have got on one bus and topped up the card $20, and so you have enough credit. And then you get on another bus 2 minutes later, and the readers won't know about that. So they just have to blindly trust whatever the card says, because they can't check back with the servers and make sure that it really is what the card should say. Every couple of hours, when a bus goes by a major station, it'll sync its stored data that is collected back to the servers, and that way they can be updated. So you could imagine potentially that if you change the value and used it quickly, it wouldn't have had time to propagate, and so you'd be able to defraud the system. But yeah, yep. So you modify the data on the card, it's synced back to the servers, and the server's like, yeah, it's all good. Yeah, so you modify the data, it's synced, it's everywhere now. Everyone believes whatever's on the card. That is the final source of truth in the system. Which is just, like, guys. So that's like a major problem, another major problem in the system. Now, I have a video of what you can do with this.
Hypothetically.
Yes, hypothetically. I mean, obviously a fakely rendered video of Photoshop or something.
They can't prosecute without a complaint.
Yeah. So that's quite a bit of money. As you can see, these little LCD displays, they're not really designed for this much money. The bits on the right-hand side get cut off. And there was an integer we saw there, so this is just, small fry. You can get a lot more than this. And, like we just showed you, this is propagated throughout the system. The next time you go and use it, it's going to be like this. Next time you check the website. It's awesome. Now, you may remember, or may not, early on, I told you the minimum and maximum values you can have on a card. So, theoretical maximum is $200. We've just shown that that's totally not enforced. Theoretical minimum is $2, negative $2, but it's assigned integer, so... yeah. You gotta try these things, right? Alright, so you thought that was bad, but there's more to come. So as I mentioned, each card has a different key it uses. And that key is derived from the public UID at the beginning of the card. If you copy the contents of one card to another card, it won't work because the key doesn't match the UID, and you can't copy the UID because it's burned in at manufacture time. This is a device called a Prox Mark III. It's a very good general purpose, open source RFID reader, writer, spoofer. It does pretty much everything. It has embedded firmware which you can update to support new protocols and stuff. It's really good. Kind of expensive, but it's really good. What we can do with this is we can place the antenna, that's the bit at the top, the bit at the bottom is like the controller, it's like got a FPGA and stuff in it. You can place the antenna between a card and a reader, and then you can record all of the traffic that goes between that card and that reader. And those vulnerabilities that researchers in Europe discovered, if you have that traffic, if you can snoop that traffic, then you can crack the keys that we use in that communication. It's really fast, it just takes like a few seconds running on a standard computer. It's not very good crypto. So this is what you can do with it. It's pretty, it's just stick in your wallet, it's alongside a card, run the cable down your sleeve, device in your pocket, and so you can you can retrieve the keys from the authentication with the reader. So, if you have a brand new card that's not a Metro card, just a standard Mayfair Classic, and you present it to the reader, it's not going to work because it doesn't have the keys that match that UID. But if we were to put the prox mark in between that fake card and a reader, we can then sniff the traffic, crack the keys that the reader tried to authenticate with, because it obviously knows the algorithm that's used, and then we can reprogram the card the second time around with those keys that we just sniffed. And the system doesn't have whitelisting. So that means if a card has the correct keys, that match that UID, and it seems to have some plausible data like a balance, the system just accepts it. So they really should have put in whitelisting. Like, they know all of the UIDs in the system, but their readers don't check. So that's another major problem, because we can just go and generate brand new cards. You can buy blank Maker Classic cards for just a few cents each from China. Like, I bought 100 of them for like $20. Yeah, they're really cheap. You just use them and throw them away. So that's kind of cool. You can add new cards to the system. But what would also be cool is if we could copy somebody else's card. So as we showed you, you can get those people's information from the system. So you can scan the whole system, figure out someone you want to target, I don't know, some important person, say. And if you were going to, you could, copy their card. That would be cool. So in their, I don't know their databases, I haven't owned it, but I can figure out that they have a table with the card UID and the card's balance, and that's the mapping. And then there's another mapping, a foreign key to that etched number. So there's kind of two IDs you need to keep in mind. The UID burned into the card and the etched number printed on the card. And there's a mapping between them. If you go to their website, there's a flashy thing. You can enter your 6-digit etched number and it will give you back your balance. If we look at what it's actually doing, it's requesting this URL. So we just go to this URL, we put in the card number, and it'll give us our balance. It gives us a bit more than our balance though. Yeah. So here's the response. There's a bit of JSON. There's some other stuff in there as well, but that's not really useful or relevant. So we have the etch number. That's the first thing. That's what we just gave it. I don't know why it's giving it back, but hey. We have the card balance, so that's the number of cents. This one has not much on it, but whatever. There's a card state, which is quite useful, because that means you can iterate over all of the possible 6-digit numbers and check whether that card is actually in use, or whether it hasn't been issued, or whether it's been blocked. So this one's active. You can get inactive cards as well. And then we have this thing called a card number. Now they looks like a really long decimal value, right? So let's take this card number, whatever it might be, and then let's turn it into hex, and then let's change the endian. And what do you know? We have the UID on that card. Now, what would be the use of that? UIDs are burnt in. We can't copy them, right? Why would we want that? I mean, they shouldn't give it, but it doesn't really matter, right? So, yeah, we get the UID as well as the balance, and we also have the etch number. So that's basically everything we need to know about the cards. Well, I said UIDs couldn't be changed, and that's kind of true. But there's things called magic Chinese cards. They're basically like grey market cards that don't follow the official specification. They don't have a UID burned in at manufacture time. So you can change the UID to be whatever you want. And so we can, think up a random 6-digit number, go to the website, get the balance, and get the UID, and then we can buy one of these cards. They're kind of more expensive. They cost like $20 each, so you don't want to get a lot of them, but you only need one because you can reprogram it. And then you can program the Chinese card to perfectly mimic what the real card is. There's no way that they can, detect this in the system. And apart from the cool fact that, you're using someone else's card, you can now, bump up the balance on that card to like $1 million, and now it appears that person, they're defrauding the system. Okay, so on to the next thing. Once you've registered your card and you've lost your card, then you can go to the website and say, I lost my card, and it will block it so that nobody else can use that card. They call this hotlisting. It's basically blacklisting the card. That's the major problem, because we could script this too and block everybody in Christchurch from using their cards. But anyway, we'll get on to this. We can see the history of the payments. Now, if you look at the right-handmost column there, that's the balance. It should go down slowly in small decrements as you use the card. The bottom 3 rows, you can see that someone's been using the card. And it should go up in increments of 10, because that's the minimum amount credit you can put on your card at once. As you can see, it doesn't do that. It jumps from $23 down to just 40 cents. That's because I modified the balance. But as I'll get to in a minute, I talked to ECAN, the people who run it, and they said, no, it's all good. We've got a fraud detection system. If, we see this in the system, we'll just ban the card. Now, they did. That card that I showed you before with 160,000 on it, my card got banned. But this card didn't get banned. And so what I've kind of been able to figure out is it's their fraud detection system only detects whether it's outside of the legitimate minimum maximum range. So, you put $50 on your card, it doesn't get banned. And even if it were to get banned, yeah, so okay, you did something silly, you put $1 million on your card and they banned it. Oh no, and I have to go, front up $20 to buy a new card. But no, their blacklisting system, the way it works is it checks the etch number that I showed you was stored in the first couple of blocks. But we already know we have full read-write access to the card. So all we have to do is modify the etch number and the card gets unblocked again. So, yeah. Okay, so I did tell ECAN about this. I figure, white hacks, we should at least give the people some time to fix it. Some of the stuff they already knew about since 2009. Some stuff was new, but they should have fixed the stuff they knew about. DSFire is a newer, much more secure card standard. They planned to upgrade to that in 2011, but there were some earthquakes, and I give them that. But what I don't forgive them for is, they said they wanted a new, flashy-looking website, and so upgrading the cards was given low priority. So, yeah, I have no sympathy for them. I'm kind of hoping that after this, maybe it'll prompt them to do something, maybe. So, what we can do, we can access most users' personal information because there's no verification in the system. If we have physical access to a card, we can reprogram it with a balance. We can do that because they're using old standards, default keys, and there's no encryption on the data stored on the card. We can add brand new cards to the system that have never been used before. And that's because there's no whitelisting done. They should whitelist all of the cards in the system. We can clone any card in the system because they give too much information when you request the balance from the server. And we can unblock it because, we can rewrite those first blocks and there's no encryption and default keys. So, if you want my takeaway from this, there's a few points. You probably shouldn't be using a Metro card. You can use cash, avoid these problems. If you have one, you should register it now, because if someone else, can go and register and pull your details. Or maybe, if your hat is a darker colour, you should be using them. Free bus rides, right? So thanks for that. I hope if you're from Christchurch, this might prove, useful for you on your way home.
Ladies and gentlemen, Amon Ra, who I think you'll agree is a fucking menace. You Christchurch boys, you'd be good. I don't want to have to phone you a lawyer. I love it like that. They had that. It's on the risk register. Problem solved, right?